a great documentary. I only saw it there a few nights ago, and given that you already had in 2006 the legend of Liam Clancy, I don't know whether this, looking back, is something that's in complete joy, or whether parts of it are kind of difficult to revisit.
Both. It is what it is, you know. What we try to create, it all came out of a book I wrote back in 2000, which was inspired by a line from the poet Nikos Kazantzakis, who wrote Zorba the Greek. And to paraphrase him, he said, when a man dies, that particular vision of life, which is his and his alone, dies with him. It therefore behooves every man to tell his story, his unique vision, you know. And I took that to heart. And I was thinking not so much of just my life, but one man's life, every man's life, during the era that they lived. I had gone up to an old church up on the side of Slieveleman, and inside the ruins of a 7th century church, I saw an old gravestone, and among the other names was Willem Clancy, died May 11th, 1735, almost 200 years exactly. And I said, I know nothing.
Birth, yeah.
I know nothing of his time. I know nothing of him. And I never will. Nothing has ever been chronicled. And he must have been part of the big house at Kilcash, so on, but if he was buried inside the church. I started thinking about this. I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to leave for my grandchildren or anybody who wants to read it a snapshot of the time from the 30s, you know, till the turn of the millennium, because it was the time of most change in the history of, probably the fastest change in the history of the world.
Well, I was going to say now, you mentioned, you alluded to the fact that you were born on September 2nd, 1935. You lived through a time of enormous change, not only here, but of course around the world. When you moved to America, they were going through the 60s, and that the change that happened, the 50s into the 60s and certainly into the 70s, was enormous. And I don't know whether you felt it in your bones that this was exceptional, or whether because it was the one life and it wasn't like you had the the perspective of another looking inside it. Whether
well, it was every day was like a revelation. There was a new development in airplanes, in speed of travel. There was a new development in speed of communication. I mean, the iPod of yesterday is given way to, so, you know, all these things. And they all came out of war. First World War, the invention of trench warfare. The way they got over that was to use the flight and see what was happening in the trenches. And then communications. And communication was power. And then, but they had perfected them by the Second World War to a great extent. And that led on to all the changes that have happened since. And the changes that happened in the world, like when I first went to America, the whole civil rights thing, I just got underway. And they were literally like a snake shaking off the skin of slavery, you know? And I saw things there traveling through the South, where we had to go whites only, you know. There was another restroom or toilet, you know, coloreds only. And that was still going. So it was a time of great change.
Well, I was going to say
and great excitement.
For an individual as well, to go from what was a wonderfully kind of almost naive, but certainly sweet and innocent kind of life that you were leading in Carrick-on-Suir, when Diane Hamilton arrives to record various different traditional singers and ends up bringing you to America, it almost made me think, you know, of Pocahontas. You were so innocent when you arrived. You know, you didn't drink, you didn't smoke, you wanted a glass of milk when you met your legend Josh, you know, one of your icons, Josh White, and there's this beautiful blonde girl in his lap who brushes by you and says, "So fresh, so young," and it must have been almost, you must have felt like Alice in Wonderland. It must have been a whole kind of new world.
If your whole world had been William Street,
right,
with the rain pissing down, you know, and those were bad years, weather-wise, bad years. Ration books. People talk of this being a depression we're in. If they only knew, you know.
Yeah.
My God Almighty, there was no safety nets.
But I love the fact that your brothers, you know, they were almost appalled about the fact that you didn't drink, didn't smoke, and were relieved to find out that you did like girls. So they realised that you weren't completely a lost cause. Was there a point you can recall when you went from being Pocahontas to Colin Farrell, because you really had a great 70s, and that idea that definitely the Ed Sullivan Show springboards you into huge fame in the States. You can sell out Carnegie Hall twice a year with ease, and I'm guessing it was just a wonderfully crazy time, I would imagine, to a
It
degree.
was, but we always stayed grounded.
Yeah.
In that we didn't tour all year, and we got back to Carrick as often as possible. And all the references, even we'd be out in Hollywood, and somebody would say, "Gee, look, Santa Monica Boulevard," and Paddy would say, "She's nearly as long as Lock Street and Half Bridge Lane." You know, referring back to Carrick. That was one element of it, that we stayed rooted. The other element that was interesting was that if you're flying to a different city every day to do a concert, you get a kind of a godlike perspective on humanity, because you're flying at 30,000 feet or whatever, you know, and you come upon a murky, what looked like vaporized manure in the sky, and you come down through it, and it's Los Angeles. And you realize that this is the place where people think of themselves as stars and like gods. But you've seen it from up there.
Yeah.
And they're no different from ants. So you can't be, you know, you can't get false images of what humanity is, because you see it from every day from a different perspective.
Well, I know my time is tight, so my last question would be just in regards to the music itself, which was obviously the main reason that fame came into your life, and that many people would regard you as one of the great ballad singers, including, of course, Bob Dylan. I don't know whether you think there was a secret to it. I kind of feel there was, you know, at least 40% passion, you know, 10% great history, you know, 10% sweat, and 40% Aaron sweater, I think. I'm not sure what that was. I think your mom's knitted Aaron sweaters must have been a big part of the inspiration, but I don't know whether, looking back on it now, you kind of feel it was just was it a majorly thought out, you know, plan, or it just sort of happened that these were songs, of course, you wanted to sing at that time in your life?
You can't think things like that out.
Yeah.
You know, it always has to come from the subconscious. You don't know where it's coming from. But as far as song was concerned, my involvement was always with words. When I first came to America, I was the actor in residence at the Poets Theatre in Harvard. And I played all the leading parts in the Yeats plays. So I was totally in love with words. And my head was away with the fairies, you know. But when it came to singing, I was always trying to find the kind of inner core of a song. And what was coming out never satisfied me. I couldn't bear to listen to myself singing because it wasn't what I was hearing inside. And I was always striving for that, to be able to express in sound what was going on in my head. And in doing that, you know, you find things in songs, especially in good songs that last. You find depths, the same as you would in I remember when I was acting, I was in Frank O'Connor's Guests of the Nation. Brilliant play, brilliant story. Ran for, I don't know, 20 weeks or something. But on the final night, the tears streamed down my face. It was as moving on the last night as the first. But there was a very flashy curtain raiser, as they used to call a one actor, you know, by Edna St. Vincent Millay, called the Aria da Capo. Frivolous, frothy, throwaway piece. And when we first read it, it seemed very clever and trendy and very New York and all that, avant-garde. After 3 nights, I hated the thing. And every night I had to do that play, I hated it. So the cream will rise to the top.
Right. Well, I'll just say now, I know tomorrow is September 2nd and it'll be your 74th birthday. I just want to let you know now you've passed the audition. Oh, that aim you had early on, I think you managed to get there, so well done. Lovely to talk to you.